Hey, what is up everybody, it's Animac here for Anime Uproar, and in my previous video, I talked about the latest dark developments in the MHA manga, and how all of this could be related to the messed up truth about Deku's father and his secret identity. I said this as we saw literally thousands of mutant Quirk users begin rebelling against the Hero Society and supporting the villains, especially Spinner. You guys really seem to like my take on Deku's dad and how all of this could be related to the big Deku's father reveal. And there were a ton of comments asking more questions about Deku's dad and talking about new theories and just asking me to talk more about it. So in this video, I will break down all the latest events in the MHA manga and how it all potentially relates to Deku's father, so let's get into it. You guys know the drill. If you enjoy our Boku no Hero videos, leave a quick like and comment right now. It only takes you a second, but it helps with that crazy YouTube algorithm. And over 50% of you guys who watch my videos are not subscribed. That means that you are watching this video right now, but you may not see my future videos and you may miss a bunch of them. So please do me a big favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. Subscribing is completely free, but it is a direct and important way of supporting the channel. Finally, this video will contain Boku no Hero manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. In the last few chapters of the manga, the focus has been on discrimination against mutant Quirk users, also known as heteromorphs, and their rebellion against the Hero Society under the leadership of Spinner. It's actually all a part of All For One's secret plan to trick all heteromorphs into supporting the villains. All For One knows that if he can turn a large number of these people against the heroes, it will be that much easier for the villains to defeat the already outnumbered heroes. And so he is manipulating Spinner and the anger of all the heteromorphs for his own gain. And he might even be in the process of turning Spinner into a mindless puppet, into a NOMU. But these last few chapters have also stressed the fact that there are mutant Quirk users who support the heroes or are heroes themselves. There are heteromorphs in high-ranking positions inside the police, there are heteromorphs who are heroes, and we have heteromorph hero students in Class 1A itself, including Shoji and Koji Koda. And as the latest chapter demonstrates, there are heteromorphs working as doctors and nurses and caregivers at the very hospital that the villain mutant Quirk users are attacking. We left off last time with Shoji using his octo arms to create one giant arm that will be able to deliver a massive punch directly at Godzilla Spinner. At the same time, Koda's quirks seem to be awakening as sharp horns began to grow out of the top of his head. We know that quirks get stronger with each generation, meaning that the current Class 1A students are already stronger than members of previous generations were at their age. So we can expect a lot from them in this battle, despite the fact that they are still just students. And speaking of quirks and quirk potential, we then see a quick flashback in which Koda's mother explains to him that once his horns manifest, he will be able to reach even those animals that are far away. This means that he will have access to a much wider and more diverse pool of animals whenever he uses his quirk. And these animals will heed his call to help him whenever he finds himself in a tough spot. During the flashback, we also see that Koda's dad was not a heteromorph, but he always defended his wife when people bullied her because of her appearance and her horns. Honestly, huge shout out to Koda's dad for being such a good dude and for standing up for his family. Mad respect. He has proved that even though there are many cruel humans out there, there are many others who are kind and loving and brave. I'd like to think that the ones who are kind and loving are in the majority, but maybe I'm just an optimist. We then see present Mike, Koda, and Shoji using their attacks on the villains at the same time. Koda calls his new attack Hitchcock Birds, as a huge number of birds, including like big eagles and stuff, attack the PLF commander. This is of course a reference to the movie The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, a movie in which flocks of birds start ominously attacking humans. For his part, Shoji calls his new attack Octo Expansion, and he manages to deliver a powerful blow to Spinner that actually smashes through his scales. After delivering this attack, Shoji calls out to all the heteromorphs gathered there, and he asks them not to let revenge consume them. If they attack innocent people now, then the cycle of violence will continue. And one day their children will become targets too, as the people who they harm today seek revenge against them, and it will just go on and on and on. But that is when Spinner seems to regain his senses, and he tells everyone that they must fight now, otherwise society will never change. Even when the heteromorphs used to quietly hide in the shadows and just mind their own business, they were still bullied and harassed and attacked and sprayed with pesticide. So Spinner commands his followers to stay the course and to continue their attack. And he leaps off a building and makes his way directly to the hospital. Now, I am not 100% sure if this is the real Spinner now, or if he is being manipulated by All For One to say these things, because in the last few chapters, Spinner could barely put two words together, and now he's somehow giving a motivational speech for his troops. We'll have to wait and see how much of this is Spinner and how much of it is actually All For One. Spinner then manages to break into the hospital, and his ultimate goal is to locate and liberate Kurogiri, who is apparently located in the research towers section of the building. Before this battle, All For One told Spinner that Kurogiri's quirk is instrumental to winning this war for the villains, so he absolutely must be located. Spinner also has to play a recording of either All For One's or Shigaraki's voice when he reaches Kurogiri, and this will activate Kurogiri's quirk. Kurogiri's quirk will then be able to liberate Shigaraki / All For One from his confinement on the UA grounds, and with all of his quirks at his disposal, Shigaraki / All For One will be able to end the war. At least that's the plan. Spinner seems committed to succeeding in this mission, and he believes that this is what will make him a hero. Well, he wants to be a hero for Shigaraki and his friends, and he wants to be a hero for all the heteromorphs. He wants to finally become someone who matters, someone like his idol, Stain. But as Spinner makes his way through the hospital, he sees the doctors and nurses holding hands and blocking his path to the patient tower section of the hospital, where all the sick patients are currently located. Among these doctors and nurses, we also see heteromorphs who are putting their lives on the line along with everyone else to protect their hospital and their patients. The doctors and nurses are united in their commitment to protect their patients regardless of what they look like or what kind of quirk they possess. And this powerful sight moves the villain heteromorphs who are following behind Spinner. Now, Spinner simply bypasses the hospital staff and heads to the research tower, where he knows that he will find Kurogiri. As he makes his way there, he expects his army of heteromorphs will follow behind him. He believes that he is now the leader of a movement that will follow him until the end. But when he turns around, he realizes that no one is following him anymore. The other heteromorphs decided to heed Shoji's words, and the sight of the doctors and nurses stopped them in their tracks. Spinner manages to reach the place where Kurogiri is being held, but when he arrives there, he is alone. Well, not exactly alone, because as Spinner screams out the name Kurogiri, Present Mike appears behind him and screams out the name of his friend, Shirakumo. And as we are left to wonder which name Kurogiri will respond to, Shirakumo or Kurogiri, the chapter comes to an end. And man, this Kurogiri mystery just keeps getting more and more interesting. And I, for one, am glad that we are finally heading towards some sort of resolution. This Kurogiri plot point has been looming over us for a long time, and I am ready to see where it goes. As I mentioned in previous videos, I believe that Kurogiri is a special NOMU who was created from a living body, the body of Oboro Shirakumo, rather than from a corpse. Oboro was severely injured by falling rubble during a villain fight, and he was later declared dead. But we know who loves working at hospital morgues and using those very places for his experiments: the infamous Dr. Ujiko, the doctor who works directly under All For One. So, I believe that Ujiko faked Oboro's death so that he could use his injured but still alive body for an experiment. And the result of that experiment is the creature we know today as Kurogiri. Kurogiri is so highly intelligent because he was made from a living human, and this means that the human is still in there somewhere. I also believe that the villains will succeed in releasing Kurogiri, and that Kurogiri will end up freeing Shigaraki Hisashi All For One from his floating prison at the UA. I believe this because, let's face it, this is a shonen, and everyone wants to see the ultimate villain in the story fighting the main hero of the story at full power. And the only way that Shigaraki Hisashi All For One can really reach his full power is if he regains the ability to use all of his many quirks. At the same time though, I do believe that Oboro Shirakumo will eventually reawaken within Kurogiri, and that he may even play a part in ultimately defeating All For One. And that brings me to the other big topic that I want to talk about, and that a lot of you guys wanted me to talk about judging by the comments on my previous video. There are of course a ton of theories out there about the true identity of Deku's dad, and why he has been absent from the story this entire time. One theory is actually directly connected to Kurogiri, and this was actually pointed out in the comments to my previous MHA video. This theory states that Deku's dad was actually turned into a NOMU, just like Kurogiri. This means that Deku's dad is still alive, he's not a corpse, but he was turned into a living NOMU like Kurogiri. And of course this means that he was turned into a villain against his will, and he will eventually make an appearance and the heroes might even have to fight him. But on the bright side, if he really is a living person who was made into a NOMU like Kurogiri, then he will also be able to eventually awaken just like Oboro Shirakumo. This theory doesn't necessarily explain why Deku and his mother seem to think that Hisashi Midoriya is perfectly fine and just working abroad, although if he really is a NOMU who is under the control of All For One, then I guess All For One could be manipulating him into calling his family and telling them that he's working abroad and that everything is fine, and meanwhile he's out there on the streets committing villainous acts on behalf of All For One. Personally, I do like this idea that Deku's father could be a NOMU or a heteromorph or something along those lines, because it means that he could have been right there hiding in plain sight all along, but we just never realized who he really was. I like this because any theory for Hisashi's identity has to explain his extended absence and family situation. Again, based on everything we know, he and Inko are not estranged, he did not abandon his wife and son, he is not dead, he is not in jail, or anything along those lines. Deku and Inko seem to believe that he is fine and still part of their family, and he's just working abroad. But if that really is the case, then how come we never see him? How come he never comes to visit, or how come he doesn't at least call his son and wife? The world of MHA features modern technology like phones and airplane travel, so it's not like Hisashi can't take a plane and come visit his family because he has to travel in a sailboat for 6 months if he wants to see them. I mean, I guess technically Deku's dad could have been visiting and calling his family all along, it just always happens off screen and no one ever mentions it in any way, but that would be pretty bad writing. With so many lingering questions about Deku's dad and with his absence being such a glaring and obvious part of the story, to say he's been around all along just off screen and no one ever seems to mention it would be a pretty massive cop-out. So I choose to believe that he really hasn't been around and that there is a very good reason for this. I also believe that the real reason is dark and pretty effed up because that makes a lot more sense. He may have a very dangerous quirk and he doesn't want to be around his family for their safety. Or he may be a heteromorph and he avoids his family because he doesn't want to expose them to discrimination. Or as I mentioned earlier, he was turned into a NOMU and is being manipulated by All For One. Deku's dad being a villain has been a very popular theory for a long time. But if he really is one, then I don't think that he would become one willingly. The kind of man who would marry Inko and raise a kid like Deku is just not the kind of man who would willingly become a villain, at least not in my opinion. But to be fair, you never know. With how much Horikoshi loves Star Wars and with how blatantly he references Star Wars, even when those references are way too on the nose and even distracting from the emotional moments in the story, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if All For One really turned out to be Deku's dad, and their relationship ended up being a tribute to the story of Luke and Darth Vader. This is also a really popular theory, probably the most popular theory when it comes to Deku's dad. But if this did turn out to be the case, it would mean that All For One had successfully manipulated both Inko and Deku for like decades. And I mean, that would be pretty wild. Personally, I think they are both too smart for that, but we'll have to wait and see. Again, if Deku's dad is a villain of some sort, I think he became one unwillingly. And I think that his absence could be related to his quirk and his appearance, and to the fact that he wants to protect Deku and Inko. The story's current focus on heteromorphs may be hinting that Deku's dad was a powerful mutant-type quirk user, and the next few chapters and the situation with Kurogiri could provide the perfect setup for the long-awaited Deku dad reveal. What do you guys think? Is Kurogiri about to awaken and help All for One? Or is Shirakumo going to take over? Is Deku's father a heteromorph? Is he a NOMU? Could he be a villain? Could he be All for One? Finally, how will the final clash between good and evil end? And will Kurogiri, or maybe Shirakumo, play an important part in it? Don't forget to share your thoughts down in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this MHA video and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment right now. It only takes you a second, but it helps me out a lot with that YouTube algorithm. And if you are part of the over 50% of people who watch this channel but are not subscribed, do me a big favor and make this the video that you subscribe and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. You can also hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at Anime Uproar. Big thank you to all of our Anime Uproar patrons for making videos like this one possible. Special thank you to Trucker Tim, a disciple of Lord Twigo himself. And I can't forget all of our The One tier patrons, including Alpha Sigma, Pate Heffa, The Toasted Chi, Corey McGowan, Owen, Taylor, and Anime S Code M. Finally, thank you to all of our other patrons, including Pro Hero tier patrons, the one and only Gilgamesh, Angel Cruz, Alicia Octor, Fatboy Games, Kaido Might Be a Duck, Alivania, Sandy, and the School Bus. If you enjoy our videos and you feel that they provide value to you, consider supporting us on Patreon or by becoming a channel member. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!